In a world trembling beneath the weight of confusion, where sacred truths lie buried beneath the rubble of forgotten days, the Sabbath stands as a lighthouse in a storm. It is not merely a day marked on a calendar, but a divine imprint, a sacred breath, whispered from the very heart of the Creator. When the world rushed forward, chasing the fleeting shadows of human tradition and shifting tides of opinion, the Sabbath remains silent yet unwavering, a testament to God's unchanging promise. It is a gift, a covenant written in the fabric of time itself, a reminder that rest is not a luxury, but a sacred necessity, that worship is not a ritual, but a living encounter. This day set apart from all others shines through the darkness like a beacon calling us home. It calls us back to the beginning, to the place where light first fractured the chaos and creation itself sang into existence. The Sabbath was not born of man's will or religious decree, but was breathed into being by God's own voice. It was made for humanity, a rhythm woven into our very souls, a sanctuary of peace amid the relentless noise of a world gone mad. Yet in the passage of centuries, this holy day has been shrouded in shadows, distorted by neglect and false teaching, until many no longer recognize it or feel its gentle pull. But the Sabbath does not forget us. It waits patiently for those willing to listen, willing to step off the treadmill of endless labor and false promises. It is a sanctuary built not of stone, but of sacred time, a fortress against despair and exhaustion. Here in this sacred pause, the heart is healed, the spirit revived, and the weary soul finds rest. To reclaim the Sabbath is to reclaim a piece of paradise, a fragment of Eden's peace, a taste of the eternal. The forces aligned against this truth are powerful, disguised in well-meaning traditions, cloaked in cultural norms, and defended by generations of misunderstanding. But the Sabbath is not defeated by human error or neglect. It is a covenant sealed by the Almighty, a commandment etched into the tablets of stone and the hearts of the faithful. To embrace the Sabbath is to stand against the tide of compromise, to reject the hollow comforts of worldly worship, and to declare allegiance to a higher eternal authority. The Sabbath calls to us with a voice both tender and unyielding. It says, "Remember me, return to me, find your rest in me." It does not ask for convenience or ease, but for faithfulness and surrender. It is a test of hearts, a measure of obedience, a symbol of hope in a world that never stops, where busyness is idolized and rest scorned. The Sabbath is a rebellion of love, a sacred defiance that proclaims God alone is Lord. In this truth, the weary find strength, the confused find clarity, the lost find a way. The Sabbath is not a relic of the past, but a living promise, a divine rhythm pulsing beneath the chaos. It is the holy breath that animates the soul, the silent hymn that soothes the storms within. To honor the Sabbath is to honor the Creator, to embrace the rest He designed, to step into a peace that transcends understanding. This is the sacred invitation, the call to stop, to rest, to worship in spirit and truth. It is a call that echoes from the dawn of creation to the present day, from the heart of God to the depths of our own. To heed it is to walk in step with the divine, to live fully in the grace and peace that only He can provide. The Sabbath is not a burden but a blessing. It is the divine heartbeat of time itself, a pulse of life and hope that resists the relentless march of exhaustion and despair. To reclaim it is to reclaim our souls, to rejoin the ancient dance of creation and redemption. It is a gift wrapped in silence, waiting to be unwrapped by those with eyes to see and hearts to believe. So let us not forget, let us not be deceived. The Sabbath remains steadfast, unyielding, eternal, and in its sacred rest we find the strength to rise again. The Sabbath is a rhythm of the heart, a divine cadence that calls us to cease striving and enter a sacred silence where God's presence unfolds like morning light over a darkened land. It is not simply a command to rest. It is an invitation to trust, an invitation to lay down the heavy burdens we carry, to stop chasing shadows of fleeting success, and to rest in the eternal arms of the Creator who shaped the heavens and the earth. This rest is not idleness, but a holy pause, a surrender of control that frees the soul from the prison of relentless toil. In this day of sacred rest, we remember who we are, creatures made in God's image, not machines forged for endless labor. The world may tell us that value lies in productivity, that worth is measured by achievement. But the Sabbath proclaims a different truth, that our identity is rooted not in what we do, but in who we are to God. This is a radical message piercing through the noise of ambition and despair. We, our beloved children, cherish not for our output, but for our very existence. To keep the Sabbath is to reclaim this identity, to step out of the ceaseless current of striving and into a stillness where the soul is known and loved. It is to recognize that beneath every success and every failure, beneath every triumph and every pain, lies the unchanging truth of God's love. A love that neither diminishes nor demands more, a love that simply is. The Sabbath becomes a sanctuary where this love is encountered anew, where the heart is invited to rest in the certainty of divine acceptance. But the world's pace is relentless, and the Sabbath is often met with resistance from within and without. We resist because rest feels like weakness. We fear that stopping means falling behind. Yet true strength is born in surrender. The Sabbath teaches us that to cease from our own striving is not defeat, but victory. A victory over the tyranny of exhaustion and the illusion of control. It is a fierce act of faith to say, I trust God enough to stop. I trust His provision, His timing, His grace. In this sacred day, the ordinary is transformed into the extraordinary. Time itself becomes a temple where heaven touches earth, where the veil between the divine and the human thins, and God's presence becomes tangible. The Sabbath is the heartbeat of eternity breaking into our fleeting moments. It is in this space that miracles of peace and renewal take root, that the soul is nourished beyond the physical. To honor the Sabbath is to listen deeply to the voice of God that speaks in stillness, soft, persistent, life-giving. It is to find rest, not only for the body, but for the restless spirit, the anxious mind, and the aching heart. The Sabbath is a refuge from the relentless demands of a world that never sleeps. A sacred shelter where the weary find shelter and the heavy laden find ease. This rest is not passive. It is alive with intention and devotion. It is worship that rises like incense, a melody of praise that fills the quiet spaces. In the Sabbath, prayer is deepened, faith is renewed, and hope is rekindled. It is a day when the soul's hunger for the divine is satisfied. when the spiritual thirst is quenched in the living waters of God's presence. Yet keeping the Sabbath is a radical act in a world addicted to busyness. It requires courage to say no to endless distractions, to refuse the idols of work, pleasure, and convenience that seek to steal this sacred time. It requires faith to trust that God's kingdom is greater than the demands of our daily grind, that His timing surpasses our urgent schedules. The Sabbath stands as a declaration that our lives are not our own, that we belong to a higher purpose and a greater hope. It challenges the lies that tell us we are defined by what we do, reminding us instead that we are defined by whose we are. In this rest we find freedom from the chains of performance and approval, freedom to simply be in the presence of a loving God. As the sun dips low and the Sabbath begins, a hush falls over the earth, a divine invitation to enter peace. This day is not a mere pause, but a pilgrimage into the heart of God, a sacred journey where the soul is refreshed and the spirit is healed. In this holy time, the eternal and the temporal meet, and life is breathed anew. The Sabbath calls us to remember the sacredness of time itself. It reminds us that every moment is a gift, every breath a blessing. To keep this day is to honor the rhythm of creation, to walk in harmony with the divine order, and to witness the power of rest, to restore what is broken and renew what is weary. In the stillness of the Sabbath, we are reminded that God is not distant but near, not indifferent but intimately involved. His presence fills the day with light. His peace saturates the hours. His love covers every need. To keep the Sabbath is to dwell in this love, to rest in this peace, and to live in this light. The world will rush on blind to the treasure hidden in this sacred day. But for those who hear the call, the Sabbath becomes a wellspring of hope and strength, a source of unshakable joy and abiding peace. It is the anchor in the storm, the quiet harbor in the chaos, the sacred rhythm that restores the soul. So let us embrace the Sabbath, not as a duty, but as a delight, not as a burden, but as a blessing. Let us find courage to step away from the noise and hurry, to enter the sacred space where God's voice is heard and His rest is found. Here in this holy pause, we discover the life we were made for, the life of grace, peace, and divine communion. In the deepest valleys of life, when shadows lengthen and the night seems endless, the light of God's grace shines brightest, unseen yet unyielding, like stars piercing a black sky. It is in these moments of trial, when all human strength fades, that the promise of divine comfort becomes real and alive. This comfort is not a mere soothing balm for pain, but a fierce, unbreakable hope that anchors the soul in the storms of despair. Pain and suffering are not signs of God's absence, but invitations to lean deeper into His presence. The wounds we carry, the grief that threatens to consume us, are not wasted. They are the very soil where the seeds of grace take root and grow. In the quiet desolation of suffering, God's love whispers louder than ever, reminding us that even the darkest night is held in His hands. This love is a refuge, a shelter where the broken find safety. It does not erase the scars, but sanctifies them, turning our brokenness into a testament of His mercy and power. When life feels shattered, God's grace gathers every fragment and weaves it into a tapestry more beautiful than before. Each thread shining with the light of redemption, faith, is forged in the fire of adversity. It is not a fragile thing, but a mighty fortress built stone by stone through endurance, trust, and surrender. When we cannot see the way forward, faith holds the lamp that guides us through the darkness. It is a steady hand in the chaos, a voice that says, "You are not alone. I am with you." In the face of uncertainty and fear, God's promises stand firm like mountains, unchanging, unshakable, eternal. They remind us that this life, with all its pain and fleeting joys, is not the end. Beyond the horizon of suffering lies a hope so profound it transforms despair into expectation, tears into joy, death into life. This hope is the heartbeat of the gospel, the power that raises the dead to new life. To embrace this hope is to live boldly amid brokenness, to walk faithfully through the valley, knowing that light will come. It is to believe that every trial serves a purpose in the divine tapestry, that every struggle is a step closer to the heart of God. This is not naive optimism, but a profound truth rooted in the resurrection, a promise that life triumphs over death. Love conquers fear. The presence of God in suffering is a mystery beyond full understanding, but it is a presence as real as breath. It is felt in the quiet moments of prayer, in the tearful cries of the night, in the unexpected comfort of a friend's embrace. This presence does not always remove pain, but it transforms it, filling it with meaning and hope. There is a sacred dignity in suffering, a holiness in pain, because through it we are drawn nearer to the heart of God, shaped into the likeness of Christ who suffered for us. Our trials become a fellowship with the divine, a participation in a greater story of redemption and love. In this shared suffering, we discover the strength to endure and the courage to hope. Grace meets us where we are, wounded, weary, and wandering. It does not demand perfection, but offers acceptance and healing. It is a river of mercy that flows endlessly, washing away guilt and shame, renewing the spirit with every drop. This grace calls us out of despair into the light, from isolation into community, from death into life. The journey through suffering is never walked alone. God walks with us, carrying us when we falter, lifting us when we cannot stand. His presence is the steadfast companion in every shadowed valley, the constant light in every dark night. This companionship brings peace beyond understanding, a peace that guards the heart and mind. In moments when hope seems distant, the soul can reach out and grasp the unchanging hand of God, steady, strong, and sure. This hand leads us through the wilderness, guides us by still waters, and restores our weary souls. It is a hand that heals, comforts, and holds, never letting go. The trials of life refine us like gold in the fire, removing impurities and revealing a purity born of endurance and faith. This refining is painful, yet it reveals the glory of God's work within us. Each hardship becomes a stepping stone to spiritual maturity, a testimony to God's sustaining power. We are called to persevere, not because suffering is good in itself, but because through it God's purpose is fulfilled. Our pain becomes a witness to the world of a hope that transcends circumstance, a joy that cannot be taken away, a peace that surpasses understanding. This witness shines like a beacon, drawing others toward the light in their own darkness. The promise of resurrection fuels this endurance. Just as the darkest night is followed by dawn, so too will every tear be wiped away, every sorrow healed, broken heart mended. This promise is the anchor of the soul, firm and secure, holding us fast in the storms of life. In the embrace of God's grace, suffering loses its sting. It becomes a passage to new life, a doorway to deeper faith, a bridge to eternal joy. The pain does not vanish, but it is transformed, transfigured by love into a testament of hope. This is the heart of the Christian story: death defeated, life restored, hope eternal. It is the song sung by the angels, the victory proclaimed by the saints, the promise whispered to every weary soul. In this story, we find our true identity, not as victims of circumstance, but as heirs of glory, children of the living God. So let us hold fast to this hope even in the darkest nights. Let us trust in the steadfast love of God, who turns sorrow into joy, despair into hope, and death into life. In the depths of our pain, may we find the light of His grace, the strength of His presence, and the peace of His promise. To walk with God is to step into a journey where certainty is scarce, but faith is fierce. It is to tread the narrow path that winds through shadows and light, trials and triumphs, loss and grace. Each step is a choice, sometimes a leap into the unknown, guided not by sight, but by trust. The call is relentless, drawing us beyond ourselves, inviting us into a story far greater than our own. In this journey, the soul is tested, stripped of illusions, and made bare before the vastness of divine truth. It is here, in the crucible of vulnerability, that the spirit is refined. Like the sculptor chiseling away stone, God shapes us with gentle precision and relentless purpose. Our rough edges are smoothed, our fears confronted, our hearts open to receive a love that never wavers. This love is not a distant concept, but an intimate reality, an embrace that holds us when we falter, a voice that whispers courage when silence threatens, a presence that lights the way when darkness closes in. It is the heartbeat of existence itself, the eternal pulse that breathes life into every moment and meaning into every struggle. To surrender to this love is to surrender to a power beyond our understanding, a power that transforms weakness into strength, despair into hope, death into life. It is an act of faith that dismantles pride and builds a foundation of humility, where grace is both the ground beneath our feet and the wings beneath our dreams. We are invited to trust not in the fleeting promises of the world, but in the unshakable promises of God. These promises are anchors in the storm, lamps in the night, and shelter in the rain. They declare that no matter how far we stray, no matter how deep the pain, no matter how long the wait, we are never beyond the reach of divine mercy. This mercy is a river that flows endlessly, washing away guilt, shame, and fear. It cleanses the soul and renews the heart, offering a fresh start with every dawn. It does not condemn, but restores, does not judge, but frees, does not judge, but frees, does not judge, but frees, does not reject, but redeems. In this mercy, we find the courage to begin again, to rise from the ashes, and to live with purpose. The path of faith is not easy. It demands sacrifice, perseverance, and a willingness to be broken so that we might be made whole. It asks us to lay down our fears, ambitions, and illusions, and to take up a cross heavier than any burden we have known. Yet in this surrender, we discover freedom, the freedom to love without reserve, to forgive without limit, and to hope without end. This freedom is the essence of the gospel. a life unchained from the past, unbound by fear and unafraid of the future. It is the power to live boldly in the present, anchored in the knowledge that we are beloved children of God, held forever in His hands. This identity is our true north, the compass that guides us through every trial and temptation. To live by faith is to see the invisible and to trust the unseen. It is to believe that behind every struggle is a purpose, behind every tear a blessing, and behind every ending a new beginning. It is to hold on to the promise that God is working all things for good, even when we cannot understand how. In this trust we find peace. Not a fragile peace that depends on circumstances, but a deep, unshakable peace that guards the heart and mind. It is a peace born of surrender, nurtured by hope, and sustained by love. This peace is a beacon in the darkest night, a fortress in the fiercest storm, and a song in the silence. The journey of faith is also a journey of transformation. It changes the way we see ourselves, others, and the world around us. It opens our eyes to the beauty hidden in brokenness, the light shining through darkness, and the possibility alive in despair. It teaches us to love with compassion, to forgive with grace, and to serve with humility. This transformation is not just personal, but communal. Faith binds us together in a fellowship of hope, a family of grace, and a community of love. It calls us to bear one another's burdens, to rejoice in one another's joys, and to walk side by side on the path toward the kingdom of God. In this shared journey, we discover that no one is alone. Every step taken in faith resonates through the lives of others, creating ripples of hope and healing that extend beyond what we can see. Our stories intertwine, our struggles unite, and our victories inspire, forming a tapestry of grace, woven by the hand of God. The road is long and often steep, but it is never walked in vain. Every tear, every prayer, every act of faith is part of a divine symphony, a melody of redemption that echoes through eternity. This symphony invites us to join in, to raise our voices in praise, and to live as witnesses of the love that conquers all. So we press on, not because the journey is easy, but because the destination is sure. We move forward not by sight, but by faith. We rise not by our own strength, but by the power of God who sustains us. We live not for ourselves, but for the glory of the one who calls us beloved. This is the call of every believer, to walk the path of faith, with courage to embrace the journey with hope, and to live the story of grace with joy. It is a call to be light in the darkness, a voice of truth in a world of confusion, and a beacon of hope in times of despair. May we answer this call with open hearts and willing spirits, knowing that in every step we take, we are held by the everlasting arms of God, who leads us from glory to glory and from grace to grace. In the silence of our souls, where the noise of the world fades and the clamor of distraction ceases, there lies a stillness, an invitation to listen, to hear the whisper of eternity. This quiet is not emptiness, but fullness, a sacred space where the divine presence dwells and the heart can find rest. It is here that faith deepens, not through thunderous declarations, but through the gentle assurance of a love that never fails. The world rushes past, filled with chaos and clamor, but faith calls us to pause, to be still and know. In this stillness, the soul breathes freely, unburdened by fear or doubt. It is a refuge from the storms that rage without, a sanctuary where hope is rekindled and strength renewed. Here the heart learns to trust, not in what it sees, but in what it knows. That God is near, ever present, ever faithful. Stillness reveals the hidden things, the seeds of faith planted in the soil of our being, waiting to grow. It uncovers the quiet desires of the heart, the whispered prayers, the silent longings that speak of our need for connection, for meaning, for love. In this sacred hush, the divine voice can be heard, calling us deeper into the mystery of grace. Grace is the breath of God that animates the soul, the unseen hand that guides us through the labyrinth of life. It is a gift freely given, yet often overlooked in the rush to control and conquer. To receive grace is to surrender control, to acknowledge our need, and to rest in the mercy that covers all sin and failure. This surrender is not weakness, but the truest strength. It is the courage to let go of pride and self-reliance, and to lean wholly on God's unchanging promise. In this act of trust we find freedom, freedom from the burden of perfection, freedom from the chains of guilt, freedom to live as we were made, beloved, forgiven and whole. Faith and grace dance together in the heart's quiet chamber, a sacred rhythm that sustains us. Faith reaches out in hope. Grace holds us close in love. Neither can be separated from the other, for faith without grace is empty, and grace without faith is dormant. Together they weave a tapestry of redemption that covers every wound and lights every darkened path. The journey of faith is marked by moments of doubt and clarity, of fear and courage, of falling and rising. In each of these moments, grace is the lifeline that pulls us back to the center, to the heart of God who never lets go. It is the steady hand that steadies our trembling hearts, and the gentle voice that calls us onward when the way grows dim. To walk in grace is to live with open hands and open hearts, ready to receive and to give. It is a posture of humility, recognizing that all we have and all we are comes from God's gracious hand. It is a life of gratitude where every breath becomes a prayer of thanks and every act of kindness reflects the love we have received. Grace transforms us from the inside out, making us vessels of hope and instruments of peace. It breaks down walls of bitterness and fear, replacing them with bridges of compassion and understanding. It softens the hardest hearts and strengthens the weakest hands, calling us to be agents of healing in a broken world. This transformation is not a one-time event, but a lifelong process. It is the slow unfolding of God's kingdom within us, a continuous work of renewal that shapes our character and our calling. It invites us to grow in patience, in kindness, in faithfulness, becoming reflections of the divine image in which we were made. To live by grace is to embrace the paradox of weakness and strength, loss and gain, death and life. It is to recognize that in our brokenness, God's power is made perfect. In our emptiness, His fullness is revealed. In our dying, we find resurrection. This truth turns the world upside down and calls us to live differently, to love deeply, to forgive freely, and to hope without hesitation. Hope is the anchor of the soul, the light that guides us through the darkest night. It is the assurance that no matter how fierce the storm, the dawn will come. Hope is born of faith and nurtured by grace, growing stronger with each step we take toward the promises of God. It is the quiet confidence that sustains us when all else fails. This hope is not a fragile wish, but a fierce conviction, a roar in the silence that declares, we are not alone, we are not forgotten, we are held by the one who fashioned the stars and who calls us each by name. This hope calls us to rise above despair, to press on through adversity, and to live as people who believe in the impossible. In this belief, the impossible becomes possible. Walls crumble, chains break, and prisons open. Love conquers hate. Light overcomes darkness. Life triumphs over death. This is the power of faith, rooted in grace, a power that moves mountains, changes hearts, and transforms lives. So let us embrace the stillness, the grace, and the hope that sustain us. Let us be people who listen deeply, love boldly, and live faithfully. Let us carry the light of grace into the world's shadows, shining with the brilliance of 1,000 suns, reflecting the endless love of God. In this sacred journey, every step is a prayer, every breath a hymn, every moment a chance to witness to the glory that sustains us. And as we walk this path, let us remember we are held, we are loved, and we are called to shine. The weight of the world presses down on weary shoulders, but within the soul there burns an unquenchable flame, a fire kindled not by circumstance, but by the eternal promise of redemption. It is a flame that refuses to be extinguished by failure, by sorrow, by the relentless trials that come like waves crashing on a broken shore. This fire is the heart of faith, fierce and steady, lighting the darkness within and beyond. Every human journey is marked by seasons of loss and gain, of joy and suffering, intertwined like threads in a tapestry too vast for us to see whole. Yet within this weaving there lies a pattern, a divine design that shapes every tear, every triumph, every quiet moment of grace. We are not lost in chaos. We are held in a purposeful story authored by love itself. In this grand narrative, pain is not the enemy, but the soil in which compassion grows. Suffering strips away the illusions that blind us, revealing the raw truth of our need for mercy and healing. It humbles the proud and awakens the heart to the beauty of dependence, not on strength alone, but on a grace that carries us when we cannot carry ourselves. This grace is a balm for the broken, a river that flows endlessly to wash away despair and nourish hope. It is the hand that lifts us from the depths, the voice that calls us back when we stray. To know grace is to know that no failure is final, no darkness absolute, no distance too great for love to bridge. The courage to endure is born here, in the acceptance of our frailty and the embrace of a power greater than our own. It is a quiet strength, forged in the crucible of trial, that whispers, keep moving forward, keep believing, keep trusting in the unseen hand that guides your steps through the valley. This trust is not passive submission, but an active surrender, a daily choosing to lean, not on our understanding, but on the unfailing character of God. It is the anchor when storms howl, the shield when shadows lengthen, the light when night threatens to overwhelm. In this trust the soul finds its home, secure and unshakable. Faith is more than belief. It is a living, breathing allegiance to hope. It calls us to walk into uncertainty with open hands and steady hearts, to step beyond the familiar and embrace the unknown. It is a pilgrimage of the Spirit, a journey not toward certainty, but toward deeper revelation, not away from struggle, but through it. This pilgrimage demands courage, the courage to face fear without retreat, to confront doubt without despair, to press on when the road is rough and the destination distant. It is the bravery to say yes to life's challenges, trusting that every obstacle is an invitation to grow, every hardship a passage to greater resilience. In the midst of this journey, we discover the profound truth that our greatest trials are often the birthplace of our deepest gifts. The broken places become windows through which grace shines brightest, illuminating paths not seen before. Through suffering, the soul is refined, purified, made ready to bear fruit that blesses others. This fruit is love. Love that is patient and kind, that bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. It is a love that reaches beyond self-interest, that sacrifices and serves, that forgives freely and welcomes without judgment. This love is the mark of faith made real, the living testimony of a heart transformed. To love in this way is to mirror the divine, to reflect the grace that first reached us in our need. It is a revolutionary act in a world hungry for connection and starved of compassion. Love becomes the language of the soul, the currency of the kingdom, the seed that grows into a harvest of peace. Peace is the fruit of a heart at rest in God, a calm that surpasses understanding even in the fiercest storms. It is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of a steady hope that holds firm when everything else shakes. This peace sustains, restores, and empowers us to be agents of reconciliation in a fractured world. Reconciliation begins within, where the battles of the mind and the struggles of the spirit collide. It is the work of healing wounds, mending broken relationships, and restoring wholeness where fragmentation reigned. This process requires honesty, humility, and a willingness to forgive both ourselves and others. Forgiveness is the gateway to freedom, the release from chains that bind and burdens that weigh. It is the refusal to let bitterness take root, the choice to break cycles of pain and open space for healing. Forgiveness does not erase the past, but transforms its power over us, turning scars into stories of grace. These stories of grace ripple outward, touching lives and changing hearts. They remind us that we are not isolated islands, but part of a vast, interconnected body. Each act of kindness, each moment of mercy, each gesture of hope we extend becomes a thread in the fabric of a new creation. This new creation is the promise of faith fulfilled, the renewal of all things, where justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. It is a world where the oppressed are lifted, the hungry fed, and the weary find rest. It is the vision that fuels our faith and ignites our purpose. Our role is not merely to wait for this promise, but to live it now, to be the hands and feet of grace in a world desperate for healing. This calling demands courage, compassion, and unwavering commitment. It asks us to risk, to sacrifice, and to love without limits. In this sacred task, we find the deepest meaning of our existence, to be reflections of the divine, bearers of hope and builders of peace. It is a life marked by faith, lived boldly, grace extended freely, and love given abundantly, a life that echoes through eternity. So rise not in fear, but in faith. Step forward, not in doubt, but in courage. Live not for the fleeting, but for the eternal. Let your life be a beacon that pierces the darkness, a song that rises above the noise, a light that never fades. In the heart of every trial, the flame of hope still burns. In the depths of every night, the dawn still waits. In the soul of every believer, the power to transform remains. Walk this path with faith. Living grace, love without end. The horizon stretches endlessly before us, not as a limit, but as an invitation, a summons to move beyond the comfort of what we know into the vastness of what could be. In this journey, every step taken is a testimony, A declaration that hope is stronger than despair, that light is mightier than darkness, that life can rise from the ashes of death. To walk forward is to refuse the chains of fear and to embrace the freedom found only in faith. Faith does not promise an easy road, it promises a steadfast companion. In every valley, it is the quiet voice whispering courage, the unseen hand steadying trembling feet. When the world's tumult threatens to engulf us, faith is the anchor cast deep into the bedrock of truth. It is not an escape from reality, but a lens that reveals the sacred woven into the ordinary. The sacred is not confined to cathedrals or scriptures alone. It breathes in the laughter of children, the resilience of a weary heart, the dawn breaking over desolate fields. It is the pulse beneath the surface, the rhythm that keeps us moving even when the weight of the world feels unbearable. To see the sacred is to recognize the fingerprint of God on every moment, every face, every breath. This recognition calls forth gratitude, a radical gratitude that transforms scarcity into abundance, hardship into blessing. It is a perspective that refuses to be defined by what is lacking, choosing instead to see what is given. Gratitude is the soil where joy grows. Joy that is not fleeting but rooted deep in the eternal, impervious to circumstance. Joy in faith is revolutionary. It is not a naive happiness, but a fierce celebration of life's possibilities, even amidst pain. It is the defiant song of a soul that knows it is held and cherished, a melody that rises above sorrow and despair. This joy is a light that kindles hope in others, a warmth that invites healing and restoration. Healing is the heart of redemption. It is the restoration of broken things, broken bodies, broken relationships, broken spirits. It is the process by which the shattered are made whole, scars transformed into testimonies of grace. Healing reminds us that no wound is too deep, no past too dark, no future too bleak for the renewing power of love. Love again stands at the center, unceasing, unstoppable, uncontainable. It is the force that moves mountains, mends the broken, and rebuilds the ruins. Love does not count the cost. It gives fully, freely, fearlessly. To love is to step into the divine story as co-creators, partners in the work of bringing light to shadow, hope to despair. This partnership demands courage, a boldness to act in the face of uncertainty, and to speak truth when silence is easier. It is a call to be salt and light in a world starving for authenticity, to embody compassion where apathy reigns. Courage in love is not reckless abandon, but a deliberate choice to stand firm for justice, mercy, and peace. Justice flows naturally from love. It is love's relentless pursuit to set things right. Justice breaks the chains of oppression, speaks for the voiceless, defends the vulnerable. It is the practical expression of faith's vision, the tangible manifestation of hope made real. Without justice, love remains abstract. With justice, it becomes revolution. This revolution is not fought with weapons, but with hearts transformed, communities healed, and lives redeemed. It begins in the intimate spaces of forgiveness, grows in the public arenas of advocacy, and culminates in a world where every child, every soul can flourish. The dream of this world is the heartbeat of every believer's faith. Flourishing is more than survival. It is thriving in the fullness of God's design. It is the blossoming of gifts, the freedom to pursue purpose, the joy of belonging. Flourishing is the promise written into the very fabric of creation, a promise that invites us to live boldly, hope fiercely, and love without restraint. Bold living calls us to risk everything for what cannot be seen but deeply believed. It calls us to surrender control, embrace mystery, to trust in the goodness that outlasts every trial. In this surrender, we discover true freedom, not freedom from suffering, but freedom in the midst of it. Freedom to grow, to serve, to love. Service is the language of faith made visible. It is the act of laying down self-interest to raise up another. In serving, we find the paradox of gain through loss, strength through humility, joy through sacrifice. Service transforms not only those who receive, but those who give, molding character and deepening faith. Humility opens the door to service, allowing us to recognize that all we have is a gift. All we are is by grace. It breaks down the walls of pride and inviting us into a posture of learning, listening, and responding. Humility is the soil where genuine community grows, a community that reflects the heart of God. Community is the body of believers, the living, breathing manifestation of the kingdom here on earth. It is where love is practiced daily, where faith is nurtured, and where hope finds flesh. In community, the isolated find belonging, the broken find healing, the lost find direction. Community is both a gift and a calling. This calling compels us to build bridges where walls divide, to extend hands where others turn away, to share burdens and multiply joy. It is a sacred duty to embody reconciliation, to be ambassadors of peace in a world fragmented by conflict. Through community, the invisible threads of grace become visible cords that bind us together. The bonds of grace sustain us when trials come. They remind us that no one walks alone. No burden is too heavy to bear together. In this solidarity, faith becomes a shared journey, a collective hope, a unified song rising to the heavens. Together we are stronger, braver, and more alive. Alive to the call, alive to the promise, alive to the love that never fails. This aliveness pulses through every fiber of our being, awakening us to the miracle of existence and the destiny set before us. It is the flame that refuses to die, the heartbeat of hope, the essence of faith in motion. Let this aliveness move you. Let it stir your soul, ignite your passion, and fuel your purpose. Let it remind you that you are part of a story greater than yourself, a story of redemption, restoration, and resurrection. Walk boldly, love fiercely, serve humbly, and live fully. In this living, the impossible becomes possible, the unseen becomes visible, and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. You are the light in the darkness, the voice of hope, the hand of grace. Rise to your calling. Embrace your journey. Live the faith that transforms. The soul that dares to trust the unseen weaves a tapestry of courage across the canvas of uncertainty. Each thread is spun from the quiet assurance that what lies beyond the present storm holds a promise no eye has fully witnessed, no mind fully grasped. This is the essence of hope, not a fragile wish, but a sturdy foundation rooted in the eternal, built by the hand of a divine architect, who shapes time and destiny with unshakable purpose. Hope, like a seed buried in winter's chill, must endure the cold before it bursts forth in spring's radiant bloom. It asks us to endure seasons of silence, seasons when prayers seem to hang unanswered in the air, when shadows stretch long and doubts whisper louder than faith. But within these silent depths, hope is growing, quiet, unseen, inexorable, preparing to break through the earth and rise. In this rising lies the story of every life touched by grace. It is the story of a heart that refused to be crushed by despair, that clung to a promise brighter than any pain. It is the story of a soul awakened to the power of resurrection. A power that breathes life into what was thought dead, beauty into brokenness, light into darkness. This power is not earned, nor is it merited. It flows freely like a river that refuses to be dammed, cascading over every obstacle, bringing life wherever it flows. It is the power of love unleashed. A love so fierce, so unyielding, that it transforms enemies into friends, fear into courage, death into life. To embrace this power is to enter into a sacred dance with the divine, moving in step with grace, yielding to mercy, spinning in the rhythm of redemption. It is to surrender control, not in defeat, but in triumph, trusting that the author of life writes every chapter with wisdom and care beyond our understanding. Surrender becomes a paradoxical strength, a mighty fortress where the weary find refuge and the restless find peace. It is not a giving up, but a giving over, a handing of the reins to the one who knows the path through the wilderness, the way across the storm-tossed seas. In this surrender the soul is renewed. Burdens once heavy become light. Fears once gripping become whispers. Doubts once roaring become quiet affirmations. The heart learns to rest not in circumstances, but in the constancy of God's presence. A presence that neither slumbers nor sleeps. Presence is the heartbeat of faith. The assurance that we are never alone, even when the world seems to turn its back. It is the unseen companion who walks beside us through every trial, every triumph, every ordinary moment, made sacred by awareness of the divine hand at work. Awareness is a holy lens that shifts perception, transforming the mundane into the miraculous. It allows us to see grace in the smallest acts. A smile offered in kindness, a word spoken in truth, a moment of silence filled with prayer. It is a vision sharpened by love, attuned to the whispers of the Spirit in every breath. This vision calls us beyond ourselves, beyond the narrow confines of self-interest, into the vastness of a purpose greater than our own. It invites us to live lives marked not by accumulation, but by generosity. Not by fear, but by faith. Not by despair, but by hope. Generosity flows from the wellspring of a grateful heart, a heart awakened to the gifts that surround it. It is the overflow of abundance, the natural response of one who recognizes that all we have is given. All we are sustained by grace. In giving we receive. In blessing we are blessed. Blessing is a sacred cycle that binds the giver and receiver in a dance of grace. It breaks down walls, heals wounds, and opens doors that seemed forever closed. It is the tangible expression of the invisible kingdom, the manifestation of heaven touching earth. Heaven on earth is not a distant dream, but a present reality accessible to those who choose to see, to believe, to act. It is found in acts of mercy, in voices raised for justice, in hands extended to the broken and forgotten. It is the pulse of divine love beating in the chest of humanity. Humanity is called to rise, not as isolated individuals, but as a community of hope, a community woven from threads of compassion, empathy, and sacrifice. Together, these threads create a tapestry rich in color and texture, reflecting the diversity and unity of the body of Christ. Unity is not uniformity, but harmony. Different notes blending into a symphony that resonates with the Creator's heart. It is a call to embrace differences, to find strength in diversity, and to build bridges where walls once stood. In unity, the church becomes a beacon, a lighthouse guiding weary souls to safe harbor. This beacon shines brightest when fueled by truth. Truth spoken with love, lived with integrity, and proclaimed with boldness. Truth is the light that pierces the darkness, the sword that cuts through deception. The foundation upon which faith stands firm. Firmness in truth demands courage. It challenges us to stand when others fall, to speak when others are silent, to act when others hesitate. It is the courage of conviction born from a deep knowing that God's word is a lamp to our feet, a light to our path. This path leads inevitably to transformation. Personal, communal transformation is the hallmark of the gospel's power, the fruit of the Spirit's work in the heart and world. It is a renewal that begins within and radiates outward, touching every corner of life. Life transformed by grace becomes a witness to the resurrection power that conquers sin, death, and despair. It becomes a story worth telling, a light worth following, a hope worth living. This transformation invites us all into a sacred journey, one that changes not only us but the world we inhabit. Walk this journey with courage. Carry the flame of hope. Live the reality of resurrection power. Be the hands and feet of love incarnate. In this the kingdom comes, not someday, but here and now. In the breath between one moment and the next. The journey forward is never without resistance. Darkness, like a relentless tide, presses against the shore of our souls, threatening to erode the fragile footprints of faith we leave behind. Yet it is precisely in this struggle that the character of hope is forged, tempered like steel in the fire of trial, sharpened in the crucible of perseverance. This resistance is not merely external, but internal. A battle fought in the secret chambers of the heart, where doubt and fear conspire to silence the voice of promise. Here the soul must summon the courage to speak truth to itself, to remind itself that even in the darkest night, the dawn waits patient and sure. Hope then becomes a steadfast anchor cast deep into the unseen depths, holding fast against the storms that rage. It is not a naive optimism, but a resolute conviction that beyond the chaos lies order. Beyond despair lies joy. Beyond death lies life eternal. This anchor does not prevent the waves from crashing, but it prevents the soul from drifting into despair. Each wave of struggle calls us deeper into the mystery of grace, a grace that meets us in our weakness, that strengthens us not by removing the trial, but by transforming it. Trials become the fertile soil from which faith grows. Sorrow the shadow from which joy eventually emerges. Joy born from the womb of sorrow is not a fleeting feeling, but a deep, abiding gladness, anchored in the knowledge that we are held by a love that neither falters nor fails. It is a light that burns steadily, even when the world around us is cloaked in shadow. This joy is a rebellion against despair, a declaration that no darkness can extinguish the flame of hope. To live in joy amid suffering is to live in the paradox of the gospel, the cross and the resurrection intertwined, death defeated, and life victorious. It is to know that our present troubles are temporary, that they serve a purpose far greater than our understanding. They refine us, reshape us, prepare us for a glory that will one day be fully revealed. Glory is the ultimate destination of this sacred pilgrimage. A glory not measured by worldly standards of power or prestige, but by the fullness of communion with the divine. It is a glory that transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, the broken into the beautiful, the finite into the eternal. This transformation is ongoing, a lifelong unfolding of the image of God within us. It is a process of sanctification that calls us to lay down old patterns, to rise above selfish desires, and to embrace a life marked by holiness and love. Holiness is not an unattainable ideal, but a practical way of living that reflects the character of God. Love, the heartbeat of holiness, compels us beyond ourselves, to reach out in compassion, to forgive as we have been forgiven, to serve without expectation of return. It is love that breaks down barriers, that heals wounds, that unites fractured hearts. It is the greatest commandment, the greatest calling, the greatest power in the universe. Power wielded in love is transformative. Changes the oppressor into the servant, the victim into the victor, the lost into the found. It is a power that flows not from dominance, but from humility, not from control, but from surrender. This power is the essence of the gospel's revolution, a revolution that begins in the heart and radiates outward. Outward radiance of this love creates communities where grace is lived daily, places where the outcast find welcome, where the broken find healing, where the weary find rest. These communities become living testimonies of the kingdom, glimpses of heaven on earth. They embody the promise that we are not meant to journey alone. Alone the path is steep and fraught with danger. Together the climb becomes a shared ascent, each step bolstered by the encouragement and strength of companions. Fellowship is a sacred gift, a reflection of the divine Trinity, a living demonstration that we are made for relationship, first with God, then with one another. In relationship we find our truest identity, not in isolation but in connection. We are defined not by what we have done or failed to do, but by whose we are. We are children of the Most High, heirs to a kingdom that transcends time and space. This identity anchors us amid the shifting sands of circumstance and culture. Culture, with its shifting values and transient trends, often seeks to define us on its own terms. But our allegiance lies beyond the here and now, rooted in the eternal kingdom. This allegiance calls us to live countercultural lives, lives of integrity, courage, and unwavering faith. It means standing firm when the world wavers, speaking truth when silence is easier, loving when hatred surrounds. This countercultural witness is costly. Yet it is the path of the faithful. It calls us to pick up our cross daily, to bear the marks of Christ in a world that resists the gospel's truth. But it also promises a joy that surpasses understanding, a peace that guards the heart and mind, a hope that does not disappoint. Disappointment will come as it must in a fallen world. But disappointment is not defeat. It is an invitation to deepen our trust, to lean harder into the promises that never fail. It is a refining fire that burns away the dross, revealing the pure gold of faith. Faith is the lifeline that carries us through the wilderness, the thread that connects us to the divine, the compass that points us toward home. It is not a static belief, but a living, breathing relationship, a conversation with God that shapes every thought, every choice, every action. In this relationship, we discover that the greatest journey is the inward journey into the depths of our own hearts, into the mystery of God's love, into the boundless grace that restores and renews. It is a journey that calls for courage, humility, and surrender. Surrender is not weakness but strength, the strength to release control and trust completely. It is the act of laying down our lives so that we may truly live. It is the doorway to freedom, the pathway to joy, the foundation of hope. Hope that carries us through the darkest valleys, that lifts us above the storms, that leads us into the light of a new dawn, a dawn where every tear is wiped away, where every broken heart is mended, where every soul finds its rest in the arms of the divine. Rest is the gift promised to the weary, the reward for the faithful, the peace that surpasses all understanding. It is the final refuge, the eternal home, the place where hope becomes reality and love never ends. Every moment we breathe is a battleground where the invisible war between despair and hope unfolds. Life will test the very fibers of our being, pulling at our seams, unraveling the threads of confidence we once wove so tightly. But it is precisely in these moments, when shadows lengthen and the night seems endless, that the soul's deepest truth is revealed. Resilience is born not from ease but from endurance. Endurance is the quiet hero that does not announce itself with fanfare, but perseveres through the silence, the pain and the waiting. It is the steady heartbeat beneath the storm's roar, the unshaken root of a tree bending but never breaking, like the ancient mountains carved by relentless wind and rain. We are shaped by the trials that press upon us, forming a landscape of strength and beauty. This strength is not our own, but a gift poured into fragile vessels. It is the power of a love that reaches down from the heavens, lifting us when our own feet falter, holding us when our hands grow weak. This love calls us to rise above the noise of the world, above the despair that whispers lies, to cling to a truth that is unchanging, unchanging like the stars that wheel through the night sky, constant and sure, a map for the weary traveler. We are not abandoned wanderers, but guided pilgrims, moving toward a horizon blazing with promise. The path may be steep, the way uncertain, but each step is marked by grace, grace that covers our failures, grace that invites us to try again, grace that whispers, "You are not alone." Aloneness is the illusion that often threatens to consume us, the false voice that convinces us of our insignificance. Yet we are woven into a tapestry far greater than ourselves, threads interlaced by a divine hand, each life a vital strand, each story a sacred thread together forming a masterpiece of hope and redemption. Is the heart of the story, the truth that breathes life into our weary bone. It is the promise that no mistake is final, no failure beyond forgiveness, no darkness beyond the reach of light. Redemption transforms the broken past into a beacon for the future, a testimony that what was lost can be found again, stronger and more beautiful. Beauty born from brokenness. This is the paradox that sustains us, like a shattered vase, lovingly mended with gold. Our scars become the places where grace shines brightest. It is in the cracks of our lives that the light of God's presence streams in, illuminating the hidden depths of our souls. This illumination reveals the path forward, clear and radiant, inviting us to step boldly into the unknown. Fear may grip our hearts, but faith whispers courage, urging us to move beyond the familiar, to trust the unseen hand that guides us through the wilderness. Wilderness is the place of transformation, a place where all that is false, where the soul is stripped bare, and the heart is made ready to receive. It is a holy ground where God's voice can be heard more clearly, a sacred silence that speaks louder than words. In this silence, we find our true selves, vulnerable, honest, and open to the healing touch of grace. Here, pride is humbled, control is surrendered, and love becomes the language of the soul. It is here that we learn the art of surrender, the wisdom of letting go, and the peace of resting in God's sovereignty. Sovereignty is the anchor that holds us steady in the chaos, the unshakable throne upon which mercy reigns. It is the reminder that no matter how wild the storm, the one who commands the winds and waves is also holding our hearts. His power is not distant or detached, but intimately near, a refuge for the broken and the weary. Nearness of God transforms every moment into sacred time. Ordinary tasks become acts of worship. Every breath of prayer, every encounter and opportunity to reflect divine love. This sacred rhythm draws us deeper into the mystery of grace, a dance of mercy and truth that shapes our very being. Being shaped by grace means living with open hands, receiving and giving, surrendering and serving. It means embracing the paradox of strength in weakness, glory in humility, victory in sacrifice. This paradox is the gospel's heartbeat, the pulse of a life transformed by the love of Christ. Christ, the bridge between heaven and earth, the perfect image of God's mercy. In him the broken find healing, the lost find home, and the weary find rest. His life, death, and resurrection are the greatest story ever told, the foundation upon which hope stands firm. Firm hope is the cornerstone of a life that refuses to be shaken. It is the light that guides us through the valley of shadows, the song that rises when tears fall, the promise that sustains us beyond the fleeting moment. This hope is anchored not in what we see, but in what is unseen, the eternal reality of God's love. Love that never fails, never fades, never forsakes. Love that reaches into the depths of our despair and pulls us into the light. Love that calls us by name and claims us as his own. This love is the source of all courage, the wellspring of all joy, the foundation of all peace. Peace is not the absence of trouble, but the presence of God. It is the quiet confidence that no matter what comes, we are held in the hands of a Father who knows us, loves us, and will never let us go. This peace is a fortress for the soul, a sanctuary amid life's storms. Storms will come. They are certain as night follows day. But within every storm is the seed of a new beginning, a chance to grow stronger, to deepen faith, to renew hope. Like the tree that bends in the wind but does not break, we too can stand firm, rooted in the love that never fails. Failing is part of the journey, not the end of it. Each failure is a lesson, each setback a step toward greater wisdom. We are called not to perfection, but to faithfulness, not to flawless achievement, but to persistent trust. This trust is the thread that weaves the fabric of a resilient life. Resilience is a gift cultivated in the garden of grace, watered by prayer and nourished by community. It is the strength to rise after falling, to keep walking when the way is hard, to believe when hope seems distant. This resilience reflects the image of God within, a testament to his enduring presence. Presence of God transforms every hardship into an opportunity for growth, every sorrow into a seed of joy, It turns our stories into testimonies, our wounds into windows of grace. Walking not by sight but by faith. Faith is the steady light in the darkness, the firm ground beneath trembling feet, the sure promise of a better tomorrow. It is a gift freely given yet fiercely guarded, a treasure more precious than gold. In faith we find our true home, our eternal rest, our unshakable hope. Hope is the anthem of the soul, the song that rises from the depths, the beacon that calls us forward. It is the pulse of life itself, the breath of the Spirit, the heartbeat of eternity. To live without hope is to drift aimlessly, but to live with hope is to journey with purpose, passion, and peace. Peace that surpasses understanding. Joy that fills the soul. Love that changes everything. These are the gifts of a life surrendered to the divine. They are the fruit of a faith that moves mountains. The light in the darkness, the dawn after the longest night. Night will end, dawn will break. The promise of new life awaits all who dare to hope, to believe, to surrender. This is the great adventure of faith, the call to rise, to walk, to love, and to live as children of the light. Within the relentless flow of time, every soul is called to wrestle with the question of purpose. Not the hollow ambitions of the world, nor the fleeting accolades that fade like shadows at dusk, but a purpose that transcends the temporal, a divine summons echoing deep within the chambers of the heart. It is the whisper of eternity, inviting us beyond ourselves, beyond the noise of the moment, to step into the sacred story of redemption that weaves all things into one. This purpose is the light that cuts through the fog of confusion and despair, a beacon ignited by the hand of God Himself. It beckons us to rise above mere survival, to embrace a calling that is as vast as the heavens and as intimate as a single heartbeat. It is the call to live not for what can be gained, but for what can be given, not for glory sought, but for love poured out. Love is the axis on which this purpose turns. It is the force that breathes meaning into existence, the heartbeat that pulses through creation. Love is not a passive feeling, but a fierce act of will. A commitment to see beyond faults and failures, to choose grace when justice demands wrath, to build bridges where walls once stood. Walls crumble when love takes root, for love dissolves barriers that separate race from race, nation from nation, soul from soul. It calls us to see the image of God reflected not just in ourselves, but in every person we encounter. This vision shatters prejudice, dismantles fear, and kindles the fire of compassion in the coldest hearts. Compassion is the language of God spoken through human hands and voices. Balm for the broken, the shield for the vulnerable, the hope for the hopeless. Compassion transforms strangers into neighbors, enemies into friends, pain into healing. It is the echo of divine mercy, reaching out across the chasms of hurt to heal and restore. To walk in compassion demands courage, courage to step into the storm of suffering, courage to face injustice without flinching, courage to carry burdens that are not our own. It is a courage that grows not from human strength, but from the presence of a God who walks beside us, who strengthens the weak, who calls us to be His hands in a hurting world that cries out beneath the weight of sin and sorrow. Yet within its groans lies the promise of renewal. Like dry bones brought to life by the breath of the Spirit, the world waits for resurrection, for revival, for a new dawn painted with the colors of hope. We are the instruments of this new creation, called to labor in fields ripe for harvest, to sow seeds of peace in soil made fertile by sacrifice. Sacrifice is the currency of love. It is the selfless offering that transforms ordinary lives into testimonies of grace. The greatest sacrifice was made once and for all, a love poured out on a rugged cross, where the weight of the world's brokenness was carried by one who bore it willingly. In that act, death was defeated and life eternal was secured. Eternal life is not merely a distant hope but a present reality. A kingdom not confined to the pages of ancient texts, but alive in the here and now. It is the kingdom where justice reigns, where peace flows like a river, where mercy covers all offenses. This kingdom calls us to live as citizens of heaven, even as we walk the earth, bearing witness to its truth, through acts of love and justice. Justice and mercy dance together in the heart of this kingdom, a divine harmony that balances truth with grace. Justice demands what is right. Mercy offers what is gracious. Together they form the rhythm of a life that reflects God's own character, a life that refuses to settle for half-truths or easy answers, but pursues the fullness of righteousness wrapped in compassion. Righteousness is the fragrance of a life aligned with God's will, a character shaped by the hands of grace and truth. It is not a garment we earn, but a robe given, woven from the threads of faith and obedience. To wear this robe is to be clothed in dignity, strength, and purpose, a witness to the transforming power of God's love. Love's transforming power renews not only individuals but communities, nations, the very fabric of society. It breaks cycles of violence and despair, ignites movements of reconciliation, and rebuilds what once was broken. This power calls us to live beyond selfish ambition, to invest our lives in the flourishing of others, to be architects of peace in a fractured world. Peace is the harvest of love's labor, the fruit born from the seed of sacrifice, sown in soil watered by tears and prayers. It is the peace that surpasses understanding, guarding hearts and minds against the chaos of fear and doubt. To receive it and to share it, to be its messenger in a world desperate for calm. Calm amid chaos is the sign of a soul rooted deeply in the eternal. When the storm rages, the rooted tree does not panic but stands firm, drawing strength from unseen wells of grace. This rootedness is the fruit of a faith anchored in the promises of God, a faith that does not waver when skies darken or winds howl. Promises of God are the pillars on which hope stands unshaken. They are the unbreakable vows of a faithful Creator who sees every tear and hears every cry. These promises light our path, guiding us through the darkest valleys toward a future radiant with the glory of resurrection. Resurrection is the heart of the Christian hope, the triumph of life over death, of light over darkness, of love over despair. It is the ultimate assurance that no matter how deep the night, dawn will break. This truth infuses courage into our souls, ignites passion in our hearts, and fuels the relentless pursuit of justice and mercy. Pursuit of justice and mercy is the legacy we are called to leave behind. A world marked by fairness and kindness, where the oppressed are lifted and the marginalized find voice. This pursuit demands sacrifice, perseverance, and unwavering faith. But it is the path of true greatness, the way of the cross made visible. Visible faith shines brightest in acts of service. Small hands reaching out to lift the fallen, voices speaking truth to power, hearts embracing the outcast. Service is the tangible expression of love, the evidence of grace alive within us. It is a call to action that resonates beyond words, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. Extraordinary lives are not born but made, forged in the crucible of trials, and shaped by relentless hope. They are testimonies of what is possible when faith is lived boldly, when love is acted upon, when the soul is surrendered to the divine purpose. Each extraordinary life is a beacon, a flame lighting the way for others lost in the darkness. Darkness may press hard against us, but it will never extinguish the light within, for that light is eternal, kindled by the Spirit, guarded by the hand of God. It shines through every tear, every struggle, every moment of doubt, a reminder that we are never alone, never forsaken, never beyond redemption. Redemption is the song that will carry us through, the promise that will sustain us until the day when every tear is wiped away, every wound healed, and every heart made whole. Until then we walk in hope, we labor in faith, we love without ceasing, knowing that the God who began a good work in us will carry it to completion. Completion is the sacred goal toward which all things move, the fullness of joy that awaits beyond the horizon of this life. It is the culmination of grace, the fulfillment of promises, the eternal embrace of love. In this completion, every story finds its meaning, every journey its rest, every soul its peace, joy, and love. These are the eternal treasures given to those who dare to live for something greater than themselves. They are the legacy of faith lived out loud, the harvest of a life surrendered to the divine. To embrace them is to step into the fullness of life, to walk boldly into the future with hearts on fire and spirits unyielding. Unyielding faith is the victory song of the soul, the unbroken anthem that declares, though the mountains fall, though the seas roar, my hope is in the Lord. It is the final word spoken by those who know that their lives are held in the hands of a God who is faithful, loving, and true. True faith never wavers, never fades, never fails. It is the light in the darkness, the rock beneath the waves, the promise of a new dawn. This faith is our anchor, our guide, our strength. It is the gift of God, the power to rise, to live, to love, and to shine until the end of days. The soul's journey is marked not only by moments of clarity, but by valleys where doubt and fear gather like storm clouds. These are the tests that forge resilience, the fires that burn away weakness, the crucibles where faith is refined. To walk through such darkness is not a sign of failure, but of a heart alive and wrestling with truth. For in the struggle the soul is stretched, expanded, prepared to receive deeper grace. Grace is the gentle hand that lifts us when we fall, the quiet whisper that calms our restless spirits, the unearned gift that turns brokenness into beauty. It is the thread woven through every story of redemption, the lifeline cast into the depths of despair. Grace is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of God's sustaining love amid it. Love, then, is both our calling and our refuge. It invites us into vulnerability, demanding we lay down shields and open wide the gates of the heart. In this openness, fear loses its grip and courage is born. Not a reckless bravado, but a steady flame that burns through uncertainty and illuminates the path ahead. The path ahead is rarely clear or easy. It winds through shadows and sunlight, through moments of triumph and seasons of waiting. Yet each step taken in faith carves a deeper mark upon the soul, a testimony written not in words but in deeds. The journey is its own reward, a sacred pilgrimage where every hardship is a lesson, every sorrow a seed of hope. Hope is the anchor in the turbulent sea, the promise that sustains when all else fades. It is the fierce conviction that no night is so dark it can silence the coming dawn. Hope is not naive optimism, but a divine certainty rooted in the character of God, who has proven time and again that love conquers even death. Death, the great adversary, seeks to steal, kill, and destroy. But in the shadow of death's menace, the light of resurrection shines brightest. The resurrection is the ultimate rebellion, the divine declaration that death is not the end, that life is eternal, that every soul has been given a chance to rise again. To rise again is to live with eyes fixed beyond the immediate, beyond the pain and the loss, beyond the fleeting pleasures of the world. It is to look with unwavering faith toward the horizon, where heaven touches earth, where justice is perfectly balanced with mercy, where every tear is wiped away and every heart made whole. Whole hearts are those who have been broken and mended by grace, who have embraced their scars as testimonies of survival and growth. The brokenness we fear is often the very soil in which new life takes root. The cracks in our lives become windows through which light pours, revealing a deeper beauty formed by the hand of the divine artist. This divine artistry is not a distant myth, but a living reality, a dance between creator and creation that transforms pain into purpose, sorrow into strength, loss into legacy. It is the rhythm of grace that pulses beneath every heartbeat, the sacred song that carries us through despair to joy. Joy is the unexpected fruit of faith in a world that often seems devoid of it. It is not mere happiness, but a profound contentment that rises above circumstance, a celebration of the soul's connection to something greater than itself. Joy is the defiant shout of the spirit, the laughter that breaks through tears, the sunrise after the longest night. The longest night, however dark, is always followed by dawn. This is the promise etched into the fabric of existence, a promise that no shadow can endure forever, that the light will return, that every ending is a prelude to a new beginning. To hold this promise is to live with courage, to step forward when others hesitate, to speak hope into a world desperate for it. Desperation is the fertile ground from which faith can grow if we allow it. It is the moment when human strength falters and divine power takes hold. It is the place where the soul cries out and finds a listening God. The space where despair turns into surrender and surrender into victory. Victory is not always a thunderous triumph, but often a quiet endurance, a refusal to give in, a steadfast heart that beats in rhythm with the eternal. It is the crown given to those who persevere, the reward for those who refuse to let go of the hand of God, even in the darkest hour. The darkest hour is not a curse, but a crucible, a moment that tests the very essence of faith and reveals its true strength. It is in these hours that we discover the depth of our reliance on God, the breadth of His mercy, the height of His love. We learn that no shadow can dim the light of a soul anchored in Him. Anchored souls do not drift aimlessly, but move with purpose, guided by the steady compass of God's Word and Spirit. They navigate the storms of life with confidence, not because the storms cease, but because their foundation is unshakable. They embody the truth that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of God in every conflict. Conflict itself becomes the soil for growth, the forge where character is strengthened and faith is made visible. It reveals what lies beneath the surface, our true desires, our deepest fears, our most steadfast hopes. Through conflict, the soul is refined like gold in the fire, purified and made radiant. Radiance is the outward expression of inward transformation. It is the glow of a life touched by grace, the brilliance of a spirit alight with love. Radiance draws others toward the source of that light, becoming a beacon for those lost in darkness, a testament to the power of God to change hearts. Hearts changed by God become vessels of His love and agents of His kingdom. They do not hoard the blessings they receive, but pour them out freely, becoming rivers of grace that nourish a thirsty world. Through these hearts, the impossible becomes possible. The hopeless find hope, and the broken are made whole. Wholeness is the gift of a life surrendered to God's purpose. It is the fulfillment of the soul's deepest longing, a harmony between body, mind, and spirit, between self and Creator. This harmony is the foundation for a life of peace, joy, and unshakable hope. Hope that sustains beyond this life, reaching into eternity, connecting us to the everlasting embrace of the One who formed us, who calls us beloved, who will never let us go. In this hope we find strength to endure, to love without limit, to live boldly for the glory of God and the good of all creation. Within the heart of every struggle lies a sacred invitation to surrender control, to lay down the illusion of self-sufficiency, and to step into the arms of divine providence. This surrender is not defeat. It is the beginning of true strength. It is the paradox where weakness becomes power, where the falling yields the rising, where the shattered soul finds its restoration. In this act of yielding, we become vessels of God's mercy, channels of His peace flowing into a restless world. Peace is not the silence of absence, but the presence of a deeper reality. It is the quiet assurance that despite the chaos, the storms, and the uncertainties, God's hand remains steady. Peace anchors the soul amid the waves, a lighthouse shining through the tempest, guiding us safely to harbor. It whispers in the stillness, "I am with you." This whisper transforms fear into courage, despair into hope. Hope is the heartbeat of the faithful. It is a defiant breath in the face of despair, the steadfast light that refuses to be extinguished by darkness. Hope does not promise an absence of pain, but guarantees the presence of purpose. It is the compass pointing beyond the horizon, reminding us that every trial is a stepping stone toward a greater destiny. This hope is born not from circumstance, but from the unchanging character of God, faithful, loving, merciful. Mercy is the balm that soothes the wounded soul, the gentle touch that heals the scars left by sin and suffering, the unmerited favor that flows from a heart of compassion, reaching into the depths of our brokenness and calling us to wholeness. Mercy invites us to extend the same grace to others, to become reflections of God's boundless love in a world aching for kindness. Kindness, then, is more than an act. It is a lifestyle, a language of the soul that transcends words. It is the fragrance of heaven breathed into daily living, the quiet revolution that changes lives one encounter at a time. Through kindness we reveal the heart of God, a heart that bends low to lift the fallen, that stoops to embrace the outcast, that reaches across divides to heal wounds. Healing is the promise woven throughout the fabric of creation, the restoration of what was broken, the renewal of life in all its fullness. It is the hand of God moving through pain to bring new beginnings, the sacred art of transforming suffering into strength. Healing reminds us that no wound is too deep, no sorrow too great for the touch of divine love. Love pure and unending. is the wellspring from which all healing flows. It is the fire that burns away bitterness, the light that dispels shadows of hatred and fear. Love breaks chains, tears down walls, and builds bridges where there were once chasms. It is the heartbeat of the universe, the song of creation itself, calling every soul to dance in its rhythm. To dance in love's rhythm is to embrace vulnerability, to risk rejection, to step out boldly into the unknown. It is the courage to love without guarantee, to give without expectation, to forgive without condition. This dance is the essence of the Christian journey, a movement toward the heart of God where all things are made new. Newness is the gift granted to those who surrender to this divine choreography. It is the dawn after a long night, the spring that follows winter's frost. Newness invites us to shed old fears, to release past wounds, to embrace the unfolding story that God is writing with our lives. Each day becomes a canvas for grace, a stage for miracles, a sanctuary of hope. Rekindled in this way fuels perseverance, the steadfast refusal to quit, the endurance that outlasts hardship. Perseverance is not mere stubbornness, but a holy resolve rooted in faith. It presses forward when the way is unclear, holds fast when the heart is weary, and believes when the eyes see only struggle. It is the heartbeat of those who trust that God's promises are true. Promises that are not idle words, but living reality etched in the covenant of grace. They declare that we are never alone, that our pain is known, that our prayers are heard. These promises whisper in the silence, echo in the storm, and shine like stars in the darkest night. They call us to stand firm, to walk boldly, to live abundantly. Abundance is not measured by possessions, but by the richness of the soul. It is the overflowing joy that comes from knowing we are loved beyond measure, the peace that surpasses understanding, the freedom found in surrendering all to God. Abundance turns scarcity into plenty, poverty into wealth, despair into jubilation. Jubilation bursts forth from hearts that have tasted grace, that have witnessed the miraculous power of God at work. It is the shout of victory, the song of deliverance, the dance of redeemed souls. Jubilation breaks chains not only for ourselves, but for those around us, creating a chorus of praise that reverberates through eternity. Eternity itself is the promise of union with the divine, the unending embrace where sorrow ceases and joy reigns supreme. It is the horizon toward which all faith points, the ultimate home for every longing soul. Eternity invites us to live now with eternal eyes, to invest in what lasts, and to trust in the God who holds the future. Future is a mystery wrapped in grace, a story still unfolding. It beckons us forward with both challenge and hope, calling us to be faithful stewards of the gifts entrusted to us. In the mystery lies the opportunity to become instruments of God's peace, vessels of His love and bearers of His light. Light that pierces the darkness, hope that anchors the soul, love that transforms the heart. These are the marks of a life lived in God's presence. To live this way is to embrace the sacred journey, to walk with purpose, and to shine with a radiance that cannot be dimmed. Radiance born from a soul set free, a heart healed and whole, a spirit alive with the fire of God's love. This is the destiny to which we are called, the invitation to step into the fullness of life, the joy of being known and loved by the Creator. It is the triumphant song of redemption, the eternal dance of grace. There is a sacred strength found not in the absence of fear, but in the embrace of it, where trembling hands reach out in faith, despite the shadows lurking at the edges of vision. Courage is not the roar of the lion, but the quiet resolve of the soul that refuses to be defined by weakness. It is the steadfast heartbeat in the night, the whispered promise that dawn will come. No matter how long the darkness lingers, this courage is born in the furnace of trial, forged by fire and refined by tears. A strength deeper than muscle, wider than resolve. In this strength we discover the essence of God's grace, unearned, unmerited, relentless. Grace is the river that flows through every crack of brokenness, carrying life where there was death, light where there was despair. It is the heartbeat of the gospel, the melody of mercy sung over us in our darkest hours. Grace lifts the fallen, covers the shame, and breathes new purpose into weary bones. It reminds us that no sin is too great, no failure too final for the redeeming power of God's love. Love, the supreme force, conquers all else. It is not a gentle sentiment but a revolutionary act that breaks through barriers of hate, fear, and division. Love tears down walls of judgment, dismantles the fortress of pride, and bridges the chasm of broken relationships. It is the fire that consumes the dross of selfishness, the water that quenches the thirst for meaning, the wind that carries the soul toward eternity. In love we find our true identity, not in what we have done or achieved, but in the simple, profound truth that we are beloved children of God. To be beloved is to be known deeply and cherished without condition. It is the realization that our worth is not tied to performance or approval, but rooted in the unshakable foundation of divine affection. This truth frees us to live authentically, to shed masks and pretenses, and to step boldly into the light of God's presence. It is the freedom that comes when the chains of shame are broken, and we stand naked before God, not condemned, but embraced. Embrace then becomes the posture of the redeemed soul, a posture of openness, vulnerability, and trust. To embrace is to say yes to God's unfolding plan, to accept both the joys and sorrows as threads in the tapestry of grace. It is to surrender control and acknowledge that life's deepest meaning is found not in certainty, but in faith. This faith is the firm foundation upon which hope is built. A rock that endures the shifting sands of circumstance. Circumstance may change like the wind, but the soul anchored in faith stands unmoved. Faith is the lens through which we see beyond the immediate, the courage to believe in the unseen, the assurance that God's promises will not fail. It is the quiet voice that calls us forward when the path is unclear, the hand that steadies us when we falter, the light that shines brightest in the darkest night. Night itself becomes a sacred space, a place of rest, reflection, and renewal. In the quiet darkness, the soul listens more deeply to the whispers of God, the subtle movements of grace. Night teaches us patience, humility, and trust. It strips away the distractions and demands of the day, revealing the heart's true longings and fears. In this sacred stillness we encounter God's presence as the dawn breaks upon the horizon. Dawn brings with it the promise of new beginnings, the chance to rise again, to start fresh, to walk in the light of hope. Every sunrise is a testament to God's faithfulness, a reminder that no matter the night's sorrow, morning will come. The dawn calls us to courage, to step into the unknown with confidence, knowing that God's mercies are new every day. This merciful love is the bridge between past and future, the thread that weaves continuity through change. Change itself is not to be feared, but embraced as part of the divine design. It is the river that carves new paths through the landscape of life. the sculptor's hand shaping us into vessels fit for purpose. Change tests us, stretches us, and refines us. It forces us to release old attachments and to trust in God's unfolding plan. In every season, God is present, leading, guiding, and restoring. Restoration is the promise that the broken will be made whole, the lost found, the weary refreshed. It is the healing balm poured out over shattered dreams and bruised hearts. Restoration reveals God's power to transform despair into joy, failure into triumph, ashes into beauty. It is the dawn that breaks over the ruins, the song that rises from the silence, the dance of resurrection life. Resurrection life is not just a future hope, but a present reality, a call to live in the power of the risen Christ. It is the heartbeat of renewal, the pulse of redemption, the breath of spiritual vitality. To live resurrection life is to walk in victory over sin, fear, and death. To live with purpose, passion, and peace. It is the sacred dance between grace and action, faith and works, mercy and justice. Justice flows from mercy, not vengeance. It seeks restoration rather than punishment, healing rather than harm. Justice is the cry of the oppressed heard in the courts of heaven, the hands of the servant reaching out to lift the fallen. It is the call to embody God's righteousness in a world marred by injustice and pain. To pursue justice is to align with the heart of God, who desires peace and wholeness for all creation. Peace is the fruit of justice and mercy intertwined. It is the calm in the eye of the storm, the stillness that follows the battle. Peace is the blessing poured out on those who hunger for righteousness, the quiet confidence that God's kingdom is advancing, even when unseen. It is the deep wellspring from which the soul drinks deeply, renewing strength for the journey ahead. The journey calls for endurance, a steadfastness that refuses to give way under pressure. Endurance is the strength to keep moving when the path grows steep, to hold on when hope feels distant, to believe when faith wavers. It is the steady heartbeat of those who trust that God's grace is sufficient, that His power is made perfect in weakness. Weakness itself is transformed into strength when surrendered to God. It is the paradox of the Christian life that our limitations become the canvas for God's glory. In our brokenness, His power shines brightest. His love flows most freely. Weakness invites dependence, humility, and trust. Qualities that prepare the soul for deeper communion with the divine. Communion with God is the breath of the soul, the wellspring of life. It is the intimate dance of presence, the sacred conversation that sustains and uplifts. In communion, the soul finds rest, restoration, and strength. It is the place where the heart's deepest longings meet the heart of God, where fear is replaced by peace and doubt by unwavering faith. Faith, hope, and love, the eternal triad, carry us through the storms of life. They are the pillars of a life grounded in God, the unshakable foundation upon which all else rests. Faith anchors us to truth, hope lifts us beyond despair, and love transforms us from the inside out. These three endure forever, the eternal song of the redeemed soul. In the silent chambers of the soul, where the noise of the world fades and the heart beats alone with its deepest truth, there stirs a longing, a hunger for something eternal, something unchanging. This longing is the voice of the Spirit whispering beneath the clamor, calling us to lift our eyes beyond the horizon of the mundane and into the vast expanse of the divine. It is the sacred invitation to awaken from the slumber of distraction, step out of the shadows of doubt, and to walk boldly into the light of God's presence. There is a profound beauty in this awakening. A transformation that begins not with grand gestures but with a single moment of surrender. A letting go of the need to control, a laying down of pride, a willingness to be seen in our true raw humanity. It is here that grace moves, washing over the soul like a gentle tide, cleansing wounds, softening hardened places, and making all things new. The soul, once weary and worn, begins to breathe again with the breath of heaven. Breath itself becomes a sacred rhythm, a pulse that synchronizes with the heartbeat of God. In each inhale, we draw in the life-giving Spirit. In each exhale, we release fear, pain, and doubt. This rhythm is the prayer of the soul, the silent song that connects us to the Creator, the thread that weaves us into the fabric of eternity. In this breathing, we find peace that surpasses understanding, a peace that guards our hearts, even amid life's fiercest storms. Storms will come. They are the inevitable trials that shape us like the sculptor's hand. They are not punishments, but invitations to deeper trust, opportunities to surrender control and rest in God's sovereignty. The winds howl, the waves crash, and the night seems endless. Yet in the heart of the storm lies a stillness, an unshakable truth that God is present, that He reigns supreme, that His love endures beyond all fear. Endurance is born in this stillness, a quiet strength that refuses to yield. It is the resolve to keep moving forward when the path is dark, to hold on to hope when everything within cries for surrender. Endurance is not merely surviving, but thriving through adversity, growing in grace and character as the fire refines the gold. It is the testimony of a soul anchored deep in the unchanging nature of God's promises. Promises, the sacred covenant between God and His people, are the lifeblood of faith. They are the anchors that hold us steady in shifting seas, the light that guides our footsteps in the wilderness. Each promise is a word of hope, a beacon of assurance that God's plan for us is good, that His love never fails, and that His mercy is new every morning. To cling to these promises is to claim victory before the battle is won. Victory, however, is not found in worldly success or fleeting accolades, but in the triumph of the Spirit over despair, in the conquest of love over hate, in the perseverance of faith when all seems lost. It is the quiet confidence that death has been defeated, that resurrection life is ours, that the grave holds no dominion over the redeemed. This victory is the song of the saints, the anthem of hope echoing through the corridors of eternity. Eternity itself is a present reality for the believer, not just a distant hope. It is the eternal now, where time and space bow to the sovereignty of God, where past, present, and future converge in the unending light of His presence. To live with eternity in our hearts is to see the world through the lens of forever, to value the unseen over the seen, to invest in what endures beyond the fleeting pleasures of this life. Pleasure, joy, and sorrow all find their place in this eternal perspective. Joy is not mere happiness, but a deep abiding delight, rooted in the knowledge of God's goodness. It is the song that rises from a grateful heart, the dance of the Spirit, free from bondage. Sorrow too is honored, not ignored or suppressed, because in it lies the soil where compassion grows, where empathy takes root, and where grace blooms most beautifully. Grace again reveals its limitless power to redeem every broken story, to weave beauty from pain, to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. It is the unmerited favor that meets us in our weakest moments, the relentless love that pursues us when we run, the gentle hand that lifts us when we fall. Grace is the miracle of God's presence made tangible in our lives. The unspoken promise that we are never alone. Alone is the great fear, the shadow that haunts the human heart. But the truth is that we were never meant to walk this journey by ourselves. Community, fellowship, the body of Christ. These are the sacred gifts that sustain us, the arms that carry us when we cannot walk alone. To belong is to be loved, to be known, to be held accountable in love and truth. It is in relationship that faith is nurtured and grows strong. Growth is the sign of life, the evidence of the Spirit's work within us. It is not always comfortable, for growth requires change, and change often demands sacrifice. Yet through every season of growth, the soul is shaped more closely into the image of Christ, marked by humility, kindness, patience, and love. This transformation is the work of a lifetime, a sacred journey from glory to glory. Glory, the radiant presence of God, is not reserved for some distant future, but glimpsed in the present moment. It shines in acts of kindness, in moments of worship, in lives surrendered to God's will. Glory breaks through the mundane, illuminating the ordinary with the extraordinary light of heaven. To live in glory is to live in the fullness of God's presence, the abundance of His love. Love, always love, remains the greatest commandment and the highest calling. It is the force that moves mountains, the power that conquers death, the reason for every heartbeat. Love calls us beyond ourselves into a life of purpose and sacrifice, a life marked by compassion, forgiveness, and relentless pursuit of justice. In love, we find the meaning for which our souls were made. Justice flows from love like a mighty river, cleansing and renewing all it touches. It is the demand of a heart aligned with God's righteousness, the cry of the oppressed heard in heaven's courts. Justice is not cold or distant, but passionate and fierce, tender and just. It calls us to act, to intervene, to be the hands and feet of Christ in a hurting world. The world's hurt is great, but so is the power of God's redeeming love. Every act of kindness, every word of truth, every step of faith contributes to the unfolding of His kingdom. We are co-laborers in this sacred mission, vessels of hope, bearers of light. In the grand tapestry of God's plan, our lives are threads of gold, woven with purpose and grace. Purpose is the flame that ignites the soul, the reason we rise each morning, the hope that sustains us through the night. It is the call to live intentionally, to love deeply, to serve faithfully. Purpose is found not in self-glory, but in surrender, not in gaining, but in giving, not in receiving, but in blessing. It is the heartbeat of the redeemed life, the song of those who have been transformed by grace. Transformation is the promise and the process. The journey from death to life, from darkness to light, from fear to faith. It is the miracle of God working in us to will and to act according to His good purpose. This transformation never ends, for it is the work of eternity, the unfolding of God's glory in and through us. And so we press on, not alone, not aimless, but rooted and grounded in the love that calls us beyond ourselves. We walk forward with hope blazing in our hearts, courage lighting our steps, and faith carrying us through every storm. We are the beloved, the redeemed, the children of the Most High, called to shine his light in a world hungry for truth, for grace, for love. The journey is not for the faint of heart. It demands courage that burns like a fire within, fierce and unyielding. The path we walk is narrow and often steep, shadowed by uncertainty, littered with the debris of broken dreams and unanswered prayers. Yet the soul that dares to trust the unseen, to believe in the promise beyond the horizon, is the soul that will taste the sweetness of victory. Faith is the compass, unwavering and true, pointing beyond the temporal into the realm where God's kingdom reigns. In the heat of trial, when doubt threatens to silence the heart song, there is a whisper that rises above the chaos, voice soft yet strong, tender yet relentless. It calls us back to the source, the wellspring of life that never runs dry. This voice is God's own, inviting us to lean not on our own understanding, but to rest in his infinite wisdom. To trust is to release the grip on our fragile human plans, and to embrace the mystery of his perfect timing. Perfect timing is the cadence of divine orchestration. What we perceive as delay, as silence, is often the sacred pause where God prepares the stage for a greater revelation. The night may seem long, the waiting endless, but dawn is inevitable. Each moment of waiting shapes us, molds us, teaches us endurance and patience. It is in the waiting that our character is refined, our faith tested, our hope renewed. Hope, this fragile yet unbreakable thread, holds the heart together when all else seems lost. It is not wishful thinking or naive optimism, but a deep-rooted assurance that God's promises are sure and steadfast. Hope is the light that glimmers in the darkest caves, the song that rises from the depths of despair. It is the anchor for the soul, firm and secure, tethered to the very throne of heaven. To hope is to expect the impossible, to believe in the unseen power that moves mountains and still seas. It is the bold declaration that no matter how fierce the storm, no matter how deep the valley, God's love will never fail. This hope transforms fear into courage, weakness into strength, sorrow into joy. It lifts us above the turbulence of life into the calm assurance of God's eternal embrace. Embrace is the heart's open invitation to receive grace, mercy, and love. It is the surrender that comes not from defeat, but from the recognition that in God's hands our brokenness becomes whole. To embrace God is to step into a sacred space where healing flows like a river, where chains fall away, and where freedom is found. It is the place where the soul once battered and bruised is made new, restored to the fullness of its divine design, the masterpiece of the Creator. Each life a unique brushstroke on the canvas of eternity. There is purpose in every scar, meaning in every struggle, and beauty in every season of growth. God's hand weaves these threads with precision and love, creating a tapestry that reflects his glory. When we begin to see our lives through the eyes of eternity, we understand that no moment is wasted, no pain is purposeless, no joy is accidental. Accidents do not belong in God's kingdom. Every step is deliberate, every breath ordained. We are not victims of fate, but heirs of a promise that cannot be shaken. This promise holds us firm through the shifting tides of circumstance and the storms of life. It is the eternal covenant that binds us to God's heart, assuring us that we are loved beyond measure and called to live in the fullness of his grace. Grace is the melody that sings through the darkest night, the light that shines in the deepest shadow. It is unearned, unmerited, freely given, a gift that transforms everything it touches. To live in grace is to walk in freedom, to move with confidence, and to love without fear. It empowers us to forgive, to heal, and to extend mercy to others as we have received it ourselves. Mercy is the heart of God beating within us, a force that breaks down walls and builds bridges. It is the balm for the weary soul, the refuge for the broken, the hope for the hopeless. Mercy calls us to compassion, to justice, to action. It demands that we see the world through the eyes of Jesus, with tenderness and conviction, with courage and humility. In mercy, the love of God becomes visible and tangible. Tangible faith manifests in acts of kindness, in words of encouragement, in lives poured out for others. It is faith that moves beyond the walls of the church and into the streets. Faith that stands with the oppressed, speaks for the voiceless, and brings light to the darkest corners. This faith is a beacon, a lighthouse in a stormy sea, guiding weary travelers toward the safe harbor of God's love. Love, again, is the driving force behind all we do. It is the heartbeat of creation, the pulse of redemption, the essence of God Himself. Love reaches beyond boundaries, crosses every divide, and transforms enemies into friends. It calls us to a higher way, a better life, where forgiveness flows freely and grace is the currency of the kingdom. To love is to reflect the very nature of God and to become His hands and feet in a broken world. Brokenness is not the end, but the beginning of God's work. In our weakness, His strength is made perfect. In our failure, His mercy abounds. Every broken heart is a vessel waiting to be filled with divine love. Every shattered dream and opportunity for resurrection hope. God's power is perfected in our brokenness, turning ashes into beauty and pain into praise. Praise rises from grateful hearts that have tasted God's goodness and cannot keep silent. It is the song of victory, the language of heaven, the breath of the soul set free. Praise breaks chains, lifts burdens, and invites the presence of God to dwell among us. It is the response of a life transformed, a heart ignited by the fire of the Spirit, a voice united with the chorus of the saints. Saints are not perfect people, but those made holy by grace. Those who walk in humility and love, those who persevere through trials and shine with the light of Christ. Each saint is a witness to God's faithfulness, a testament to His power to redeem and restore. We are called to join this great cloud of witnesses, to run the race with endurance, and to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Faith is the foundation upon which everything rests. It is the unshakable rock in a shifting world, the anchor that holds us fast in every storm. To live by faith is to trust God's promises, to obey His voice, to walk boldly into the unknown with confidence that He will never leave us nor forsake us. Faith is the victory that overcomes the world and the light that guides us home. Home. The place where our souls find rest, where love is complete and peace reigns forever. This is the eternal destination for all who believe, the promised inheritance of the redeemed. It is a home not built by human hands, but prepared by God, a place of joy, reunion, and everlasting life. To live with heaven in our hearts is to live with hope, courage, and unyielding joy. In the silence between the moments, in the stillness that often feels empty, there lies a profound presence, a sacred whisper that calls the heart to awaken. It is here in the quiet that the soul hears the true voice of God, a voice that transcends noise and distraction. This voice speaks not in thunder or flame, but in the gentle assurance that you are never alone, that love surrounds you like an endless ocean, vast and unending. The stillness is not absence but fullness, the quiet not emptiness but the fertile soil where faith takes root and grows. Growth is a journey without shortcuts, a slow unfolding of the soul's deepest potential. It is not a linear path, but a spiral, returning to the same truths again and again, each time with greater clarity and depth. The trials that once crushed become the stepping stones to wisdom. The pain that once blinded now sharpens vision. In this sacred progression, the heart learns to discern the voice of God from the clamor of the world, to choose the eternal over the fleeting, the sacred over the superficial. The sacred is woven into the very fabric of our existence, hidden in the ordinary moments and the everyday acts of grace. It is found in the kindness of a stranger, the laughter of a child, the embrace of a friend. The sacred reveals itself in the beauty of a sunset, the rhythm of the seasons, the miracle of a single breath. To recognize the sacred is to awaken to wonder, to see the world as a gift, and every moment as an opportunity to encounter the divine. Wonder is the soul's natural response to the presence of God. It is the wide-eyed amazement that breaks through cynicism and despair, the spark that ignites passion and creativity. Wonder opens the heart to possibility, invites awe and dissolves fear. It restores joy where it has faded and renews the capacity to dream. When we live in wonder, we walk hand in hand with the Creator, delighting in His handiwork and rejoicing in the mystery of life. Mystery is not a puzzle to be solved, but a truth to be embraced. It challenges the mind but liberates the spirit. The deeper we dive into the unknown, the more we discover the vastness of God's love and the endlessness of His grace. Mystery invites us to trust beyond what we see, to surrender to a wisdom far greater than our own. It teaches humility and awe, beckoning us to bow before the majesty of the divine and find peace in the unanswerable. Peace is the fruit of this surrender, the calm that remains when the storm rages around us. It is not a fragile calm, but a profound serenity rooted in the soul's confidence in God's sovereignty. Peace guards the heart and mind, keeping them steady and secure despite external chaos. It is the quiet assurance that no matter what happens, God is in control and His love will never fail. To know this peace is to live free from fear, anchored in hope and empowered by grace. Grace flows like a river from the heart of God, reaching every corner of our lives. It is the power that lifts the fallen, restores the broken, and renews the weary. Grace is not earned but freely given, a gift that transforms despair into hope, shame into dignity. Living in grace means extending this same mercy to others, becoming agents of healing and reconciliation. It is grace that breaks down walls and builds bridges, uniting hearts across divides and bringing light into darkness. Light is the eternal symbol of God's presence, the beacon that guides us through the night. It reveals truth, exposes shadows, and leads the way to freedom. To walk in the light is to live transparently with honesty and courage, embracing the fullness of who we are in Christ. Light dispels fear and doubt, illuminating the path ahead and giving strength for the journey. It invites us to shine boldly, reflecting God's glory in a world longing for hope. Hope is the companion of light, the unwavering expectation that no darkness can overcome the dawn. It is the thread that weaves through the fabric of faith, connecting the promises of God with the realities of our lives. Hope sustains us when the way is hard, encourages us when the heart is weak, and inspires us to keep moving forward. It is the song that rises in the night, the flame that refuses to be extinguished, the anchor that holds fast to the promise of new life. New life begins in the heart that chooses to believe, to trust beyond the evidence, and to step into the unknown with courage. It is a resurrection from despair, a rebirth into freedom, and a renewal of purpose. This new life is not perfect but transformed, marked by grace, empowered by faith, and guided by love. It is the beginning of a journey that never ends, a story written by the hand of God and lived with joy and passion. Passion burns within the soul like an eternal flame, fueled by the knowledge of God's love and the calling to share that love with the world. It drives us to action, compels us to serve, and inspires us to live fully. Passion is the heartbeat of the faithful, the energy of those who dare to dream, and the courage of those who stand for truth. It is the fire that consumes fear and doubt, leaving only purpose and power in its wake. Purpose is the anchor of the soul, the reason for our existence, beyond mere survival. It is the divine calling that gives direction and meaning to every moment. Purpose is found not in achievement or status, but in alignment with God's will, in living out the unique design woven into each of us. When we embrace our purpose, we become instruments of God's love, vessels for His grace and lights in the darkness. Darkness will always exist, but it has no power over those who walk in the light of God's love. It is the enemy's realm, a place of fear, confusion, and despair. But even in the darkest hour, a single light can shine with overwhelming brilliance. That light is faith, hope, and love, the eternal triad that conquers all. It calls us to stand firm, to resist the shadows, and to proclaim the victory of the cross. Victory is not a distant dream, but a present reality for those who trust in God. It is the triumph of grace over sin, light over darkness, and life over death. Victory is found in the daily battles won by faith, the small acts of courage, the moments of forgiveness, and the choices to love unconditionally. It is the crown placed upon the head of the faithful, the reward for those who endure, and the promise of eternal joy. Joy flows from victory like a river bursting its banks, overflowing with gratitude and praise. It is not dependent on circumstances, but rooted in the unchanging nature of God's love. Joy transforms sorrow into celebration, weakness into strength, and fear into courage. It is the anthem of the redeemed, the song of the soul set free, and the fragrance of heaven on earth. Freedom is the gift of the gospel, the liberation from chains that bind us to fear, guilt, and shame. It is the power to live authentically, to walk boldly in truth, and to love without reservation. Freedom is the fruit of grace, the inheritance of the children of God, and the birthright of all who believe. To live in freedom is to experience the fullness of life promised by Christ, to walk in the light, and to shine His glory. Glory belongs to God alone, the Creator of all things, the King of kings and Lord of lords. It is His glory that transforms us, sustains us, and leads us home. To live for God's glory is to reflect His character in word and deed, to love with His heart, and to serve with His hands. It is the highest calling, the deepest joy, and the eternal reward. Home is not just a place, but a promise, a sanctuary where the weary find rest, the broken find healing, and the lost find their way. It is the eternal dwelling prepared by God for those who love Him, a place where tears are wiped away and joy reigns forever. To long for home is to long for God, to seek His presence above all else, and to live with the hope of reunion and restoration. Rest in this truth. No matter the storms you face, no matter the shadows that threaten to overwhelm, God's love is your refuge, His grace your strength, and His peace your anchor. You are not alone. You are held, carried, and cherished beyond measure. Your story is not over. The best is yet to come. Every breath you take is a sacred hymn, a quiet testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unyielding grace of God. In the vast tapestry of existence, your life is a single luminous thread woven with purpose and divine intent. When darkness encroaches, threatening to snuff out your light, remember that the dawn follows even the longest night. The sun does not hesitate. It rises relentlessly, painting the sky with hope. So must your soul rise, undaunted, unbroken, aflame with the certainty that you are deeply loved, fiercely protected, and eternally called. This calling is not a distant echo, but a burning flame within, a relentless invitation to live boldly and love radically. It is the voice that whispers in the tempest, urging you beyond fear, beyond doubt, beyond the limits of your own understanding. It beckons you to step into the arena of life with courage as your armor and faith as your shield. There is no room for hesitation here, only the fierce urgency to embrace your God-given destiny and shine with the brilliance of the divine. Your scars are not marks of shame, but badges of honor, proof that you have endured, survived, and overcome. They are the map of your journey, etched deep into your flesh and soul, telling a story of grace that never gives up. God's strength is made perfect in your weakness. His power is revealed when you cannot stand alone. When you feel broken, know that you are being remade, shaped into a vessel of glory, a beacon of hope for a world desperate for light. The world may try to convince you that you are small, insignificant, forgotten, but God sees you. He calls you by name, whispers your worth into the very fabric of creation. You are His masterpiece, fearfully and wonderfully made, crafted with infinite love and precision. To doubt your value is to doubt the Creator Himself. Rise up in the truth of your identity, clothed in righteousness and crowned with purpose. Walk boldly as a child of the Most High, for you carry within you the spark of heaven. In the face of uncertainty, hold fast to the promises that never fail. God's word is a rock unshaken by the tides of change and the storms of life. It is the anchor for your soul, the light for your path, the hope that will not disappoint. When confusion clouds your vision, return to this truth. God is faithful. His love is relentless. His grace is boundless. He is the constant in a world of chaos, the refuge for the weary and the strength for the weak. Faith is more than belief. It is the unwavering trust that moves mountains and calms seas. It is the hand that reaches out in the darkness, confident that it will grasp something solid. Faith is the bridge between the seen and the unseen, the present struggle and the future victory. It calls you to step forward even when the path is unclear, to walk boldly into the unknown with the assurance that God goes before you, beside you, and within you. Love is the highest law, the eternal command that defines our existence. It is the force that created galaxies and knit you together in your mother's womb. Love is patient, kind, and fierce, a burning fire that cannot be quenched. When love guides your actions, fear dissolves, walls fall, and lives are transformed. Love is the legacy you leave, the light you shine, the hope you plant in the hearts of others. To love is to live like God, to embody the divine, and to make heaven visible on earth. Hope is the song that sustains the soul through the darkest nights, the quiet drum beat that marches forward even when all seems lost. It is the promise of new beginnings, the whisper of grace that says this is not the end. Hope fuels perseverance, sparks joy, and ignites dreams. It reminds you that every moment is a gift, every trial a lesson, and every breath an opportunity to witness the miracle of life renewed. Courage is the refusal to be paralyzed by fear, the decision to rise when the world would see you fall. It is the quiet strength that stands firm in the storm, the boldness to speak truth in a culture of silence. Courage is born from faith and fueled by love. It is the heartbeat of the brave and the anthem of the faithful. When you act with courage, you become a light in the darkness, a voice for the voiceless, and a beacon for those lost in despair. You are called to be more than a spectator in this life, to be a warrior of light, a vessel of hope, and an ambassador of grace. Your life matters beyond measure. Your story is powerful beyond words, and your faith is a force that can change the course of history. Stand tall, beloved, for you carry the breath of God within you, the fire of heaven on your lips, and the strength of the ages in your heart. The journey may be long, the road rough, and the battles fierce, but you are not alone. Every step you take is guided by an unseen hand. Every tear you shed is held in a sacred place, and every prayer you utter echoes in eternity. God's presence is your shield and your sword, His love your fortress and your song. In Him you find your true home, your eternal purpose, and your unshakable peace. Let your soul rise like the dawn, relentless and radiant. Let your heart beat with the fierce love of the divine. Let your life be a testament to the power of grace, the victory of faith, and the unending hope of resurrection. You are the light that darkness cannot overcome, the voice that calls others to freedom, and the embodiment of God's unstoppable love. Now step forward with boldness, walk with faith, and live with passion. The world awaits your light. Shine with all you have, for you are fearfully and wonderfully made. This is your moment. This is your calling. This is your victory.